the chase, shall we? Here's the new Honda Civic Type R, and we already know that it's brilliant. Firstly, because Honda doesn't get Type Rs wrong, and secondly, because, spoiler alert if you haven't already seen it, Chris Harris has driven it on the TV show and said so. So think of this as a partner piece to his Dunsfold track yobbery. The other reason we know it's awesome is that the old one was, and this one, whisper it, isn't actually very new. But that doesn't stop it being the ultimate hot hatch. And I'm going to show you why, but with a twist, because here we are at a rather wet Estoril, and we're going to start with the stuff it gets wrong. Number 1, size. It's really big, perhaps too big to qualify as a hot hatch. At 4.6 metres long, it's a foot longer than the latest Mark 8 Golf GTI. Oh, I like this. Proper hot hatch weather out in Portugal. Grey, misty and damp. Hot hatches should be threadable. They should be able to nip through little gaps and dart down side streets. And this can't really do that. It's almost 100 millimetres wider than a VW Golf. And in fact, it's bigger overall than any other hot hatch. It's almost the same size as a BMW M3. Number 2, the rear seats. Despite the size, there are only 2 seats in the back. We'll skate over the generous legroom, but look, it's all a bit penny pinching. They've done away with the centre armrests, so your cup holders are down here. The standard Civic has 3 seats across the back, so why can't this? Number 3, the dash graphics. Honda, it is 2022 now, and these graphics mostly seem like something out of the noughties. In fact, a lot older than that if we're talking about the shift-up lights on the dash, which, honestly, I think Knight Rider had more convincing LEDs than that. It's all a bit cheap. Number 4, price. And speaking of cheap, the new Type R isn't. The last one was £36,000. I know the world has been turned upside down since, but £47,000? Seriously? Honda is planning on selling hundreds rather than thousands, and that's seemingly justification for sending the price sky high. Switcheroo time. Here's why the Civic Type R is absolutely worth it. Number 1, size. Okay, so you can't have one if you've got more than 2 kids, but the boot is huge. 410 litres, expanding to 1,212 if you fold the seats. This is a spacious everyday car. Number 2, the driving environment. Yes, we're back in the cabin, but to talk about the seats and the driving environment, because no one does it better than Honda, and Honda has never done it better than this. It's absolutely faultless. And there's a reason for this. Honda has this concept of continuous improvement. They call it Kaizen, which is a much prettier way of putting it. But it works. These seats, they've been retrimmed in a grippier material, and they're just, I don't think I've ever sat in a seat which better combines comfort and support, because they feel quite soft, and yet you just don't move in you. They hold the material of your clothes. And then there's the steering wheel, which is just a delight. I even like these little vents they've done for the air vents here. And then, of course, the gear lever. Look, it's just so simple, so tactile. No one does it better, but barely anyone does it at all anymore, a manual gearbox. Anyway, that's quite enough chat about the interior. Let's go and put it all to good use. Number 3, powertrain. It's a great word, powertrain. Let's start with the engine bit of it. So this uses the K20C1 engine, which is exactly the same engine as the old Civic Type R. It's just come in for a few tweaks and upgrades to improve its power and efficiency. So it's now 324 horsepower instead of 316. And those efficiency gains that Chris spoke about on the TV show, 3% more efficient turbocharger. That, if you're interested, has come about by they've taken a couple of blades out of the turbo and reshaped them to make it run more efficiently. Efficiency. They claim 34.4 miles to the gallon and 186 grams a kilometre of CO2, which is fine actually. It's not outstanding, but it's better than the new Toyota GR86. But what we're interested in here isn't the numbers, It's the charisma of this engine, and it's not the most exciting to listen to, and I know this is all meant to be one of the positives. No one does a really fruity turbo 4-cylinder, and this one is, it's okay. It doesn't sound particularly exotic or exciting, but we do need to talk about the thing it does really well, which is power delivery. Because you slow down, so at 2,000 RPM, okay, your peak torque is at 2,200, and then as soon as you go 3,000, it really goes. And there's a reason to keep the revs piling on, because it doesn't lose torque or interest at all. It just keeps going all the way to the 7,000 RPM red line. And the gearbox, you just never want to stop changing gear, because after 25 years or more, no one does a gearbox remotely as good as this. It's just absolutely enthralling to change gear in. And look at what it's doing to this road. It's monstering it. But to push it any harder, we need to head to a track. Number 4, suspension. So Honda's real genius is the suspension, the differential, the reduction of torque steer, and all those elements, not only at the front axle actually, but at the rear, and the clever stuff that does to really balance the car. So most cars suffer from torque steer because of the difference between the wheel center position and the bottom of the steering axis. That length, that gap, is what gives you torque steer. If you can minimize that, you get less torque steer. You literally physically minimize the length. And that's what Honda have done with their clever dual axis suspension. And it really, really works, said he, understeering a bit. Anyway, it's soaking wet at Estoril, but it does it very well. And then of course you blend in that differential to what the torque steer and what the front suspension's doing, and you nullify all those elements and you smooth them out. It just feels so precise. Everything about it just feels so together. Oh, it's just wicked, wicked thing. You can play with it on the throttle just so nicely. It's so precise. So once you keep those revs up, hey, look at it. Woo! That's front drive sliding around like that. It's so well balanced. That's what I was saying about the rear axle. Oh, all that Kaizen so hard at work. It's so predictable as well and stable, and you feel so confident. Look at that. Oh, this is good. This behaves like an old Peugeot. I love the fact they've gone down a wheel size. This now wears 19s instead of 20s, and that's great, I think. And this one has already set a record-breaking time at Suzuka, and doubtless it'll be off to the Nürburgring where it'll beat the, I think it was like a 743.8 that the old generation did. This one actually develops more downforce than the old one, despite looking like it doesn't. Number 5, stance. Overall, this is a subtler, less in-your-face car, but the hints are spot on. From a low angle, you pick up how wide the tyres are, how little clearance there is, the stuff that only people like us care about. The looks are subjective, but this is a car I'd be happy to be seen in. And with around 90 kilos of downforce, it actually has more aero than the old one. This is the ultimate hot hatch. Well, it's this or the tempestuous hard nut that is the Toyota GR Yaris for me. You could argue that a Golf R is more complete, well-rounded and easier to live with, but given a straight choice, I'd have this every single time. It's as much of a serious driving tool as a Cayman GT4. And it's a traditional old-fashioned hot hatch, front-wheel drive, manual gearbox. What happens when electric comes along? Well, the Type R continues, says Honda. How's that going to pan out? I don't know. If it was me, I'd be making the most of this while I can. It's an absolute masterpiece.